Hello, this is Michelle with the Glimmers of Intuition, where I make self-concept extremely easy. Today we're going to talk about capacity expansion. And what I mean by that is when, in regards to love, it's the story that kind of where your limiting beliefs come up. For me, it used to be when I would get what I wanted in a relationship, I just automatically started self-sabotaging. And the reason I was self-sabotaging, it was, probably extremely not harmful, but hurtful to my partner, but also me. But I kind of have a gentle approach with it because it wasn't like it was something I was doing on purpose. It was just coming from the stories that I was telling myself in regards to love. And a lot of times if we're, when you start to look back at your patterns and you look back at what maybe you experienced and what you're wanting to experience, there's a story going there. And if you're really honest and you want to kind of get past this and be accountable, it's not blaming you and it's not even blaming the other person. They're just kind of a mirror to what stories are going on within you. And when you start to realize that maybe there's a story going on that you feel like when you get what you want, that it's too good to be true. And how this will show up is maybe the other person will ghost you, or things are going great and then suddenly they, just say that they don't want to be in the relationship with you. And one thing that I've learned on this journey is nothing is set in stone. And I'm not saying that, when you have an undesirable circumstance that you need to manipulate somebody or tell them about themselves. I mean, you can do that, but I come from more of I just don't move like that. And if you do, no shade, and coming from, I used to be a more reactive person. And when I started this work of working on, it was more just like a self-growth. And then, after my divorce, I just decided that I just didn't want to experience that type of marriage anymore. But I did want to have like a partnership. And when I started getting, intentional about it, it wasn't the person that wasn't working, it was me. And I'm not saying that you should go on this, this deep shadow work journey. You don't need to do that. All you need to do is take an inventory of what you're experiencing around you that you're not liking. Either maybe you're having arguments with your partner, maybe they're ghosting you, maybe you're in no contact, whatever the case may be. And then start to ask yourself questions as to why you believe that's true. And when you start to do that, you start to realize that it isn't even your truth anymore. It might have been your truth maybe a while ago, or it may have even been a story that you picked up from watching a movie when you were younger, songs you were listening to, your parents, your grandparents, whatever the case may be, and it's not even your truth anymore. So when I started to understand that I actually had control, and I'm not saying that I had to and it wasn't even like I had to start telling people things. I just started having to organize myself differently. And what I mean by that is organize how I saw myself and how I see myself in love. And when you start to see yourself in a better light, you're not being, and it wasn't that I felt like I was better than anybody else or that I was even being like narcissistic. It was just treating myself like how I should always have treated myself. And then by doing that, the people, places, and things around you, they respond in that manner, and it just, kind of flourishes from there. But to kind of kickstart it, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable, and that's where you want to regulate your nervous system. And you can do this by EFT tapping, breath work, even working out is really good in the sense that it allows you to not feel so anxious while you're making these changes, because capacity expansion, that's what happens to us when, and it's not even just in love, it's in like a job. Let's say like I experienced this. I went back to school, I got my degree, and then I was still kind of scared to kind of be seen. And it was that story I had running about being afraid to be seen. I mean, as silly as that sounds, that's what was going on. But when I started to kind of work with myself and be very gentle with yourself, it's not one, you don't have to rush, because what's meant for you is not going anywhere. And two, it's uncomfortable, not that it's wrong, but it's uncomfortable because it's new territory for you. And when things are new, your mind is so powerful that it wants to just protect you, and it wants to stay consistent with, what it knows, not what is near the highway. So anyway, but it wants to keep you safe. And so by doing so, it's keeping you in things that are, normal to you, even if they're necessarily not a good narrative. It's what you're used to. So that's, and how we can change this is in many ways. You can meditate, once you get the nervous system down, then, and you're not so anxious, you can start to tell yourself a new story. You can script, you can journal, you can affirm, you can say things internally to yourself. There's a lot of, proven methods that, work. And so you can experience a new story. A great explanation of this is when somebody is homeless and they go to living in a home, and it's not that it's not luck, it's what they're telling themselves. And a lot of times people in those circumstances are telling themselves like, hey, this isn't the end, I'm going to get a home. And when you kind of repeat, things to yourself, you think about when you learned your ABCs, it was repeated to you. So that's how repetition is what the subconscious learns from. And when you realize that, along with nervous system regulation, that is just, you can really take your life to a whole nother level. And really, rather than having experiences that you're not enjoying, you'll have experiences that you do enjoy. So until next time, take care.